World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history. More than 70 million people lost their lives. Entire cities were turned into ashes, and nations were pushed to the edge of collapse. But among all the battles, invasions, and military strategies, one single decision stands above the rest. A decision so shocking, so powerful, that it did not just end a war, it changed the future of humanity forever. By the year 1945, the world was exhausted. Europe was in ruins. Nazi Germany, once feared across the continent, had finally been defeated. The war in Europe was over, but in the Pacific, the war was far from finished. Japan continued to fight with relentless determination. Defeat was not an option. Surrender was considered shameful. American forces had already witnessed this mindset in brutal battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Japanese soldiers fought to the last man. Civilians were often caught in the middle with devastating consequences. Each victory came at an enormous cost. Military leaders knew what came next, an invasion of the Japanese mainland. But the numbers were terrifying. Estimates suggested that such an invasion could result in more than 1 million American casualties and several million Japanese deaths, soldiers and civilians alike. The question was no longer how to win the war. The question was how to end it. While the world focused on tanks, ships, and aircraft, another effort had been unfolding in complete secrecy, an effort hidden from the public, hidden from most politicians, hidden even from many military commanders. This secret effort was known as the Manhattan Project. It began years earlier, not with confidence, but with fear. In the late 1930s, scientists discovered that splitting the atom could release an enormous amount of energy powerful enough to destroy an entire city. The greatest fear was simple and terrifying. What if Nazi Germany developed this weapon first? Albert Einstein, a scientist who deeply feared the consequences of such power, signed a letter warning the American government. That letter reached President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt understood the danger immediately. If this weapon was possible, the United States could not afford to be second. The Manhattan Project was born. Billions of dollars were spent in secret. Entire towns were constructed from nothing. Thousands of scientists and workers were recruited and sworn to silence. Many of them did not know what they were working on. They were only told that their work was essential to ending the war. At the heart of the project was J. Robert Oppenheimer, a brilliant physicist with a deeply conflicted soul. He gathered the greatest scientific minds of the era, men who were unlocking forces once thought to belong only to nature itself. As the project advanced, so did the doubts. Some scientists began to question whether humanity was ready for such power. They feared that once unleashed, it could never be controlled again. But the war did not wait for moral debates. By the time the atomic bomb was nearly complete, Germany had already surrendered. The original justification for the weapon no longer existed. Still, the project continued. In April 1945, President Roosevelt died suddenly. Transiently, Harry S. Truman became President of the United States. Only after taking office did Truman learn of the Manhattan Project. He was shocked. He now carried the responsibility for the most powerful weapon ever created. In July 1945, the first atomic bomb was tested in the New Mexico desert. The explosion was unlike anything the world had ever seen. A blinding flash, a massive fireball, a shockwave that shook the earth. The weapon worked. Now the decision could no longer be avoided. Japan still refused to surrender. Truman faced a choice that no human being had ever faced before. Use the atomic bomb and force Japan to surrender, or continue the war and accept the loss of millions of lives. There was no perfect answer, only consequences. The decision made in those moments would not only end World War II, It would introduce the world to the nuclear age, an age where a single decision could determine the fate of humanity itself. The morning of August 6, 1945, began like any other day in the city of Hiroshima. The sky was clear. Children were walking to school. Workers were preparing for another day in a nation already exhausted by years of war. No one in the city knew that history was about to change forever. High above Hiroshima, an American bomber named Enola Gay flew silently through the sky. Inside the aircraft was a single weapon, unlike anything ever used in human history. At 8:15 in the morning, the bomb was released. 43 seconds later, the world entered a new age. A blinding flash of light filled the sky, brighter than the sun itself. In an instant, the center of Hiroshima disappeared. Buildings were vaporized, streets were erased, human beings were turned into shadows burned onto concrete walls. The explosion generated temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. A massive shockwave tore through the city, flattening everything in its path. Within seconds, tens of thousands of people were dead. Those who survived the initial blast wandered through a landscape that no longer looked like Earth. The city was silent, then filled with screams. People with severe burns searched for water. Many collapsed before reaching it. Fires spread uncontrollably, merging into a massive firestorm that consumed what little remained. Doctors and hospitals had been destroyed. There was no help. There was no escape. In the hours and days that followed, people began to die from a mysterious illness. Their hair fell out, their skin darkened, their bodies weakened. Radiation sickness, a concept the world barely understood, was claiming more lives. Even after Hiroshima, Japan did not surrender. American leaders believed a second strike was necessary. 3 days later, on August 9th, another bomb was prepared. Its target was the city of Kokura, but clouds obscured the target. The bomber changed course. The secondary target was Nagasaki. At 11:02 in the morning, the second atomic bomb detonated. Once again, an entire city was torn apart in a single moment. Thousands were killed instantly. Thousands more would die slowly in the weeks and months that followed. The message was now undeniable. Japan could not continue the war. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito addressed the nation in a radio broadcast, the first time his people had ever heard his voice. He announced Japan's surrender. World War II was over. The celebrations that followed in Allied nations were filled with relief. The war had finally ended. But for the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the war never truly ended. They lived with the physical scars, the psychological trauma, and the knowledge that they had witnessed the birth of a terrifying new era. The atomic bomb had ended the war, but it had also changed the meaning of war forever. For the first time in history, humanity possessed the power to destroy itself completely. The decision made in 1945 continues to divide the world. Some believe it saved millions of lives by preventing a full-scale invasion. Others believe it crossed a moral line that should never have been crossed. Even today, the question remains unanswered. Was the decision necessary, or was it the moment humanity lost its innocence? What is certain is this: after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world was never the same, and the shadow of that decision still hangs over us.